She's just the responsible one, my dad said at my brother's engagement party, laughing, his arm draped around Jason's shoulder. Tessa keeps the lights on. Jason's the one who actually lives. Everyone laughed. I smiled. I picked up my glass of wine, the case I'd had delivered for the party, and I took a slow, quiet sip. That was the moment I decided to stop keeping the lights on. I want to be clear about something before I tell you what happened next. I didn't make that decision out of rage. I didn't cry in the bathroom or drive home shaking. I'm a civil engineer. I spend my days calculating load-bearing capacity, stress tolerance, structural failure points, and standing in my parents' living room, the one I was quietly paying the mortgage on, I simply did the math. The structure had been compromised for years. I had just finally stopped pretending it could hold. We're always curious where people are watching from. Drop your city in the comments. We read every single one. My name is Tessa. I'm 32 years old. I have a professional engineer's designation, a condo I own outright in Waterloo, Ontario, and until about 14 months ago, I was the invisible financial spine of my entire family. My parents didn't call it that, of course. My dad called it Tessa being practical. My mom called it family helping family. My brother Jason called it nothing at all, because in his mind, the money simply appeared, the way hot water appears when you turn on a tap. You don't think about the infrastructure, you just expect it to work. Let me give you the background, because context matters here. I'm 4 years older than Jason. When I was 23 and fresh out of university with my engineering degree and my first real salary, my parents were struggling. My dad had been laid off from a manufacturing plant outside Hamilton, and my mom worked part-time at a dental office. They were behind on their mortgage, a modest bungalow in Brantford, and there was genuine talk of selling it. I remember sitting at that kitchen table watching my mom go through envelopes with a pen, circling numbers. I felt sick, so I helped. I set up a monthly transfer. Just to bridge the gap, I told myself. Just until Dad found something. He found something eventually, a consulting role that paid about half what he used to make with flexibility, which mostly meant he worked 2 days a week and golfed the rest. But by then, my transfer had become infrastructure. It was just part of the budget. Nobody discussed it. Nobody said thank you, exactly, or not in any way that felt like they understood what it was costing me. Then Jason graduated. Business degree. No job yet, but big ideas. He wanted to launch a subscription service for locally sourced Canadian pantry staples, maple products, artisan preserves, that kind of thing. My dad thought it was visionary. My mom cried talking about it. She was so proud. They came to me. A loan, they said. Just to get him started. We'll pay you back. It's family. I made a mistake. I gave him $40,000 from my savings and co-signed the lease on a small commercial unit in downtown Guelph. The business lasted 11 months. The unit sat empty for 3 more while I kept paying the lease because my name was on it. That was the first one. There were 2 more after that, a meal per pet delivery service, then a premium dog care app. Think Rover, but Canadian, Jason said, as if that explained everything. Same pattern each time. I would get a call from my mom, soft and warm and slightly anxious. Jason's so close, she'd say. He just needs a little runway. You know how it is with startups, and because I've been trained since I was 23 to equate love with financial support, I transferred the money, signed the papers, and went back to my desk. My dad never asked directly. That wasn't his style. He operated through narrative. At dinners, at family gatherings, he would talk about Jason's hustle, Jason's vision, Jason's bold refusal to work for someone else. Then he'd glance at me and say something like, "Not everyone's built for the corporate grind, right, Tessa?" As if my career, the one bankrolling everything, was the safe, boring, unambitious choice. As if I was the one who had settled. I used to let it wash over me. I thought if I just kept going, eventually they'd see it. Eventually my dad would sit down across from me and say, "I know what you've done for this family. I see it. Thank you." I was 32 years old before I finally understood that moment was never coming. Not because he was incapable of gratitude, but because acknowledging what I'd done would require him to admit what that made him. So, the engagement party. Jason had proposed to his girlfriend, a perfectly nice woman named Abigail whom I genuinely liked, and my parents threw them a party in the Brantford bungalow, the house I was paying for. I'd contributed to the catering budget. I'd sent over the wine. I showed up alone in a dress I'd bought on my lunch break, and I smiled at everyone and answered the same questions. No, not seeing anyone right now. Work's been busy. Yes, it's great. Yes, very stable. And then my dad made his toast. He talked about Jason's spirit, about how raising someone like him, someone who dares, someone who takes risks, someone who refuses to play it small, was the proudest thing he'd ever done as a father. He looked across the room at Jason like he was looking at the sun. He didn't mention me once. I stood there with a smile fixed to my face, and I felt something go quiet inside me. Not broken, not shattered, just quiet. The way a system goes quiet right before it shuts down. Afterward, he said it. We were standing near the kitchen and he'd had a couple of scotches and he was talking to my Uncle Raymond with that expansive, generous energy he got when he felt like the patriarch. Honestly, he said, gesturing toward Jason across the room, that kid right there, if I could have had just the one, I'd have picked him. He's everything. He didn't lower his voice. He wasn't talking to me. He just didn't care whether I heard. Uncle Raymond chuckled. My mom was nearby and she didn't say anything. She looked at her drink. I set my glass down on the counter very carefully. Good to know, I said, and I went to find my coat. I drove the hour and 40 minutes back to Waterloo on the 403 in silence. No music, no podcast, just the highway and the dark and the thing my dad had said turning over and over in my mind like a stone in water, getting smoother and smoother the more I thought about it. By the time I pulled into my parking garage, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, I was clear. I went upstairs, made tea, opened my laptop, and started drafting an email to my lawyer. Her name is Margaret Osei, sharp, no-nonsense, the kind of woman who reads contracts the way other people read menus. She'd helped me set up the family support arrangement years ago, and she had, at the time, strongly advised me to document everything. I had. Every transfer, every co-signing, every lease payment. 12 years of receipts in a folder I'd been quietly maintaining and hoping I'd never have to use. Margaret, I wrote, I need to unwind something we built a long time ago. It's time. She called me the next morning. Walk me through what happened, she said. And I did. All of it, starting with the engagement party, ending with the thing my dad said. There was a pause. What's your priority? She asked. Assets or relationships? Assets, I said. The relationships made that choice for me. Here's what most people don't realize about a situation like mine. The architecture matters enormously. Because I had structured everything carefully, the family support as informal personal transfers, not gifts, the business investments as documented loans with my name on the commercial agreements, I had more legal standing than most people in my position would. The co-signed leases were in my name. The mortgage top-up transfers were logged. Jason had, in each of his ventures, listed me as a financial backer in the incorporation documents. I'd never received a single return. I'd never been consulted on a single business decision. But I had the paper trail. Margaret's first move was a letter, sent certified mail to my parents' address and to Jason separately, a formal notice of intent to withdraw ongoing financial support effective 30 days from the date of the letter. No dramatics, no accusations, just clean legal language saying that the informal financial arrangement was ending and that any outstanding obligations with my name attached would be reviewed. I didn't call to warn them. I didn't text. I just let the letters arrive. My mom called on a Thursday afternoon, 4 days after the letters would have been received. I let it ring twice, then answered. Tessa. Her voice was careful, controlled. The voice she used when she was trying to manage a situation. We got a letter. I know. What is this about? Are you upset about something? She said it like whatever I was upset about was probably an overreaction, like she was already preparing her counter-argument. I'm not upset, I said. I've made a decision, honey. Her voice dropped, went softer, went to that register that had worked on me for 30 years. I know your father can be thoughtless sometimes. You know how he gets at parties. He didn't mean. He said he wishes he'd only had Jason. Silence. He said it in front of Uncle Raymond, in front of half the room. You were standing 6 feet away. I didn't want to make a scene. I know, I said. You never do. But here's the thing, Mom. I'm done making it easy for everyone not to make a scene. The transfers stop at the end of the month. I've also begun reviewing my co-signed obligations, which means the lease on Jason's commercial unit in Guelph is going to be surrendered. I've already notified the property manager. And the mortgage top-up, I stopped, took a breath. You should talk to your bank about your actual payment situation because I won't be supplementing it anymore. Tessa. Her voice changed completely. You can't. We depend on that. I know you do. That's the problem. She started crying. And here's what I want to be honest about, because I think it matters. It hurt. It's not that I felt nothing. She's my mother. I've known the sound of her crying my whole life, and it has never once failed to make something clench in my chest. But I'd also spent 12 years letting that feeling make decisions for me, and I could see exactly where that had gotten us. I love you, I told her, and I meant it, but I'm done. I hung up. The following week was quiet. Too quiet, in a way that felt deliberate. The silence of people regrouping, deciding on their next move. I went to work. I had lunch with a friend. I slept better than I had in months. Then Jason called. What the hell, Tessa? Not a question. He opened with it like a door kicked in. The lease termination notice showed up. Are you serious right now? That's my business. Your business has been operating at a loss for 8 months, Jason. It's a startup. That's how startups work. I know how startups work. I've funded 3 of yours. I kept my voice completely flat. I want to talk to you about something specific. Can you do that? Or are we just doing the yelling thing? A beat. What? I've been reviewing the incorporation documents for Maple Plus More and for Northpaw. Those were the last 2 ventures. In both cases, you listed me as a 20% equity partner on filings you submitted to the CRA without my signature. Silence. You filed tax documents with my name on them, Jason. Documents I never signed. Dad said. He stopped. Finish that sentence. He didn't. I've engaged an accountant to do a full review, I said. Margaret has the documentation. If those filings reflect what I think they reflect, we're not talking about a business disagreement anymore. We're talking about something a lot more serious. Tessa, come on. It was an admin thing. Dad said you were basically a partner anyway, so I want you to hear me very carefully, I said. I'm not calling the CRA. I'm not filing anything. Right now, today, I am choosing not to. But that is a choice I am making, and I reserve the right to make a different one if anything else comes up. Are we clear? He said yes. He sounded young. He sounded scared, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was finally speaking the right language. Margaret had flagged the CRA issue early in her review. Using someone's name on tax filings without their consent is not a gray area in Canada. It's a serious compliance violation, potentially fraud. My dad, it turned out, had been the one to encourage it. His logic, as Jason later admitted to me in a text that I screenshot and saved, was that since I was basically funding everything anyway, having my name on the filings would make the structure cleaner. He had genuinely convinced himself this was sensible. That's the thing about men like my father. They don't think they're doing anything wrong because in their minds, what's mine was already the family's to begin with. The accountant's report came back 3 weeks later. The total across 12 years of transfers, co-signed leases, business loans, and mortgage supplementing came to just over $230,000. In Jason's ventures specifically, money I'd transferred as investment had been used on things that had nothing to do with the businesses. A ski trip to Whistler, furniture for his apartment, a lease on a truck he drove personally, about $60,000, conservatively, that had been redirected from stated business purposes to personal use. When there's a documented investment agreement and the money goes elsewhere, that's not just poor business management. I didn't call my parents to tell them what the report found. I let the information sit with Margaret. I let it be leverage I didn't have to use, and that was the point. The real confrontation came 6 weeks after the letters. My dad organized it. He called it a family meeting, which in our family had always meant a tribunal where everyone agreed with him by the end. He asked Uncle Raymond and my Aunt Linda to be there, presumably because he thought their presence would add gravity, add the weight of family consensus. He texted me Sunday 2 p.m. The house. We need to sort this out as a family. Please be there. I replied, I'll be there. I arrived exactly on time. I wore a blazer, I carried a folder. My dad was in his usual chair at the head of the living room, the one he'd claimed so long ago it had a shape in it. My mom sat beside him, red-eyed. Jason was on the couch with Abigail, who looked like she genuinely had no idea what she'd walked into and was considering her exit options. Uncle Raymond and Aunt Linda were on the love seat, faces arranged into the careful neutrality of people who have already decided which side they're on. Tessa, my dad started in his mediating voice, the one he used to perform reasonableness. We're all here because this has gone far enough. I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I think we can clear it up. I didn't say anything. I let him keep going. You've always been the steady one, the reliable one. And I know that sometimes, he paused, picked his words, sometimes the reliable one doesn't always get the spotlight. But that's not about love, sweetheart. That's just about personality. You and Jason are different. He needs more dad. I said it quietly and he stopped. I'm going to need you to not do the thing where you explain my own family experience to me. He blinked. I'm here because you asked me to be, but I'm not here to be talked out of this. I set the folder on the coffee table. I want to address something specific, because I think there's information in this room that some people don't have. I looked at Uncle Raymond. You were at the engagement party. You heard what he said. Raymond had the grace to look uncomfortable. He'd had a few drinks. He said he wished I'd never been born. In the house I pay for, at a party I contributed to, in front of you. I kept my voice completely even. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to be accurate about what happened. The room was quiet. There's something else, I said, turning to Jason. Do you want to tell them or should I? Jason looked at his hands. Tell us what? My dad said with his booming, still confident voice. The CRA filings, I said. The ones with my name on them, the ones I didn't sign. I opened the folder and slid the accountant's summary across the table. The ones you told Jason would be fine because I was basically funding it anyway. My dad's face went through several things very quickly. The filings are a legal problem, I said. Margaret has reviewed them. If Revenue Canada were to audit either of those businesses, my name is on documents I didn't authorize. That's not a family disagreement. That's a federal issue. Now hang on, my dad started. I'm not reporting it, I said. Let me be clear. I am not going to Revenue Canada. I'm not going to a civil court. I am making a choice right now in front of everyone in this room not to pursue this. I looked at him steadily. But I need you to understand what that choice is worth. Because the alternative is something none of us want. The silence was different now. It had texture. My dad deflated in stages. The authority, the performance of it, it left him slowly, like air from a slow puncture. He looked, suddenly, like what he was, a man in his 60s who had organized his entire identity around a story he'd told himself. A story where he was the patriarch and Jason was the future and I was the practical, reliable, useful background fixture. A story that required my labor and resented my existence in equal measure. Jason. My dad's voice was quiet. You told me she wouldn't even look at the filings. Dad, you told me she was too busy, that she just signed whatever we sent. I said. Jason stopped. Looked at me. Looked away. My Aunt Linda made a sound, a small, involuntary, horrified sound. My dad put his face in his hands. I let the room absorb it. Then I looked at my mom. Mom, I said, and my voice was softer now, because she was the only one in the room I still had complicated feelings about. I meant what I said on the phone. You can make a different choice. You can come with me right now or call me this week and I will help you figure out your next step. I will help you. Not them. You. She looked at my dad. Then at me. Her eyes were wet and her face was doing something difficult in private. She looked at my dad again. Get out of my house, she said, quietly. I thought she was talking to me, and then I realized she wasn't. She was looking at my dad. I don't know what happened in that room after I left. I closed the door behind me and I walked to my car and I sat in the driveway for a moment with my hands on the wheel and I took 3 slow breaths. Then I drove home. What I know is what came after. The mortgage top-up stopped. My parents, my dad, specifically, had to face the bank and explain that their income situation had changed. They ended up selling the Brantford house 6 months later. It sold for enough that they could afford a small condo in the East End of Hamilton, bought outright with a modest amount left over. It was not the life my dad had built his identity around. It was a real life, maybe for the first time. Jason's commercial unit was released back to the property manager and the business folded. He took a job, a real one, with a salary and a manager and performance reviews at a logistics company in Mississauga. I heard through Abigail, who texted me separately, that he was actually good at it, that it turned out he had skills that worked better inside a structure than outside one. I believed her. I'd always thought that, actually, beneath all the startup mythology. My dad did not call me for 4 months. When he finally did, I let it go to voicemail. He said he'd been seeing someone, a therapist actually, which surprised me. He said he'd been thinking about the party, about what he'd said. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for anything. He just said he'd been thinking about it. I listened to the voicemail twice, standing in my kitchen, and then I put my phone down on the counter and stood there for a while. My mom was the one I stayed in contact with. Slowly, carefully, the way you'd reopen a door you weren't sure was structurally sound. She'd gotten a part-time bookkeeping job. She had a head for numbers that she'd never been allowed to use because my dad had preferred to manage the finances himself, which mostly meant mismanaging them. She called me on a Sunday afternoon a few months after everything settled and she told me that she'd used her first 3 paychecks to pay off a credit card that had been carrying a balance for 11 years. She sounded different, steadier somehow, like someone who discovered they had better footing than they'd been told. I should have said something at the party, she said. Yes, I said. I didn't know how. I know. We stayed on the phone for a while after that, talking about nothing in particular. Her new job, a book she was reading, the weather in Hamilton, which was the kind of bleak that only February in Ontario can achieve. It wasn't repaired exactly. It wasn't the relationship I'd wanted for 32 years, but it was honest, maybe for the first time, and honesty felt like something I could build on. I used the money I'd been transferring every month, to the mortgage, to Jason's leases, to the whole invisible apparatus of it, and I redirected it. Some of it went to a registered account I should have opened years ago. Some of it went to the Wren Foundation, a Toronto-based organization that provides emergency financial support to women leaving unstable family situations. I thought about those women a lot. The ones who'd been the reliable ones, the useful ones, the ones whose names were on things they hadn't signed, the ones who'd been told their steadiness was a personality trait rather than a sacrifice. I thought about what it might have meant to them to have had someone in their corner earlier. My work promoted me to senior project lead last spring. I'm overseeing a bridge rehabilitation project on a highway corridor in northern Ontario. It's unglamorous, technically demanding, and I love it more than I can explain to people who don't do what I do. Every morning, I go to my desk and I solve real problems with real solutions, and the math either works or it doesn't. There's no narrative. There's no mythology. There's just load and structure and whether or not the thing holds. My dad's voicemail is still in my phone. I haven't deleted it. I haven't called him back yet either. Some structures take longer to assess than others. You don't rush an evaluation just because